Okay, and we are live. Let's just make sure all of the correct things. That sounds good, doesn't it? That's a good mic right there. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of another episode of Lockdown Livestream. Today, I want to take some questions from our amazing patrons, and then if you're here on YouTube after I take questions from my patrons, I want to get to yours. But glad to have you here. I hope everybody is surviving, doing well, happy, prayerful, joyful, staying away from Twitter, all those things. Good to be here with you. We're doing really well here at the Frad household. Thank you to everybody who has written to us and emailed us and texted us. As you know, my wife and I were quite sick, very sick, in fact. My wife was admitted to hospital after being in the emergency room. She had to be on breathing treatment, antibiotics. She's now much better. I'm significantly better. I'd say we're almost both back to 100%. I've already said this, but so many of you are continuing to ask, so let me say this. We both tested positive for COVID-19, so whatever that's worth. But there you are. So, before we get started, I just want to say, big thanks to everybody who is a patron, patreon.com/MattFrad. You get a bunch of free stuff in return. Just want to let you guys know that next week we are starting our 7-part video series on the great books of Western civilization. This is going to be a 7-part video series that's going to be released 1 week at a time. Stephen Rummelsberg will be the teacher. It's available just for our patrons. So if that interests you, if you want to make your time of quarantine a lot more productive, please consider becoming a patron. You also get all this free stuff in return too, so hopefully that is a help. All right, let's take some questions from our patrons. Here we go. Put these bloody things on. Notice everybody was commenting on my glasses last time. They were like, where'd you get them from? And I said, literally from a gas station. These ones aren't, but the other ones, I think, were from a gas station or a Walgreens or something. All right, let's see here. Javier, I think that's how I say him, Ortiz says, what's the best way to show someone that without God, the standards of morals just become subjective, and then in that case, there is no true moral good or evil? Okay, yeah, so we're talking about sort of objective morality. Is there such a thing? Is morality, are moral facts mind independent or not? Because when we think about where morality can come from, it seems to me that we have kind of at least 3 sort of ontological bases to draw from. Right, beneath us, at our level, and above us. So if morals come from beneath us, I guess that one of those candidates could be evolution. We've evolved in such a way that when we act a certain way, a human civilization or the group tends to flourish, and therefore we find certain acts abhorrent because they have been instilled into us by evolution, and that's it. But if that's the case, then they're not binding upon me. If I can figure out that these particular moral laws have been kind of inculcated into me through evolution, I can choose when to disobey them or to disobey them entirely. I'm actually reading a great book right now by Dostoevsky called The Possessed, or The Demons, or The Devils. It's translated 3 different ways. It's one of Dostoevsky's 4 most prominent works, but he does tend to address this issue a lot. Crime and Punishment, he deals with it. Brothers Karamazov, he deals with it. The idea that if God does not exist, then all things sort of become relative, at least morally speaking. Okay, so I don't think you can say morality comes from beneath us, evolution, and say, well, therefore they're objective, mind independent, somehow binding. I don't think you can say they come from our level, that is to say, societally. You could make the argument that, well, we as a society have decided that certain things are not to be done and certain things are to be encouraged. But, society is just other people, and other people don't have authority over me, so I can choose to obey them or not obey them. It seems to me that only if, they come from above us can they actually be binding, right? So I like the way William Lane Craig formulates the argument. If God doesn't exist, then objective moral facts don't exist. But it seems from our everyday experience that objective moral facts do exist. Some things are actually right, actually wrong, actually good, actually evil. Therefore, it would follow that God exists. And obviously, you have to spend some time parsing that out. But yeah, if God doesn't exist, then what are we? We are accidental byproducts of nature who have evolved up until this point and we have ideas about what should and shouldn't be done. But on what basis do we make that judgment if God doesn't exist? We're sort of just like animals, and when an animal kills her cub or forcibly copulates with another member of the species, we don't call these things murder or infanticide or rape, because they're not moral agents, and what they're doing isn't actually wrong. And I think that's the beginning of a good argument, I think, is to show why moral facts do plausibly exist, and that points to God. Seth says, I know you probably hate drama, but what's your take on the on the recent SSPX debate on Twitter? Do you think it's okay to receive the sacraments there if all other churches are closed? If my memory is correct, we are allowed to receive from the Orthodox Church, which are definitely schismatic, in extreme circumstances, right? So would the same rule apply here? Okay, so I don't know a lot about this. I think a lot of people don't know a lot about this because there's just a lot of confusion surrounding the relationship between SSPX and the church. SSPX are not... I don't think it's fair. I think it's right to say they're not in a state of schism, but I would say that they're canonically irregular. And for that reason, I would not attend an SSPX chapel to receive Eucharist during this time of quarantine. Why? Well, I suppose two reasons. One, because my bishop has, at least for now, kind of forbidden public gatherings at churches, and you can debate that and debate the legitimacy of that, or how we could come up with creative ways around that. I understand. But I guess that would be the first reason. Second reason, because they are canonically irregular, I wouldn't. And then thirdly, I would say that receiving Eucharist is not a salvation issue for me at this point. Like, I can go weeks and months without receiving the Eucharist and still be saved. But let me say this. If I were to commit a serious sin, I would be banging. Put it this way: if I had committed a serious, grave sin, if I believed myself to be in mortal sin, and my bishop had prohibited priests within his diocese to hear my confession, okay, and it was an emergency, right, such that I was like at the point of death, I personally would be banging down the door of an SSPX priest to hear my confession. In fact, it was Pope Francis who gave them their faculties, or said that they could hear confessions during the Year of Mercy. My understanding is that he hasn't sort of taken that away. That's my understanding. I'll let you fight that out on YouTube and Twitter. This should be fun. But as far as what I've heard about the Twitter fights, I actually haven't really been following it because I don't use Twitter hardly at all. I popped online to say one thing last night, and then I just ducked away. I really use it very rarely because I find that Twitter interrupts a peaceful day. I'm trying to read books, trying to just chill, be with my kids. Whereas if I get on Twitter, it's like there's a noisy conversation going on, and you can't actually enjoy a peaceful, restful day with your wife and children if you're always in the middle of a noisy conversation. And a lot of it's a stupid conversation. So it's a noisy, stupid conversation. And so for that reason, I really honestly don't know. I've been told a few things via text message, but I don't really know much. There you go. James McKee says, how would you describe your spirituality? Do you have any favorite mystics? Have you ever read of St. Teresa Benedicta of the Cross? Yes, I have read Edith Stein's work on empathy. I think what she had to say was quite interesting. It would seem to me that Edith Stein, it would, if my reading of her is correct, almost understands what neuroscientists mean by mirror neurons before we'd even begun talking about them when it comes to empathy. I found that really fascinating. As far as mystics, I really love John of the Cross. I love in his work that he refers to God as I know not what. I love Teresa of Avila. So I don't know if that answers your question. Daniel says, hi Matt, I am 25 with 3 kids. 3-year-old, 18-month-year-old, a 3-week-old. I have pretty much been in charge of entertaining and teaching the older 2 since we've had our newborn. I've been struggling with losing my temper with them and really want to better myself in this regard. Any tips? Yeah, God bless you, Daniel. I think the fact that you're even asking that question is huge. Yeah, it's really difficult to have little children, right? Especially, you say here a 3-week-old. You don't get a lot of time to yourself. Often you don't get a lot of sleep. So I guess I would say, try as best as you can to get as much sleep as possible, as much exercise as possible, within reason, a couple of times a week at least. I would say, like, be aware when you think you're about to lose your patience. This has been really helpful for me. I think sometimes you can be in that, like, you get really frustrated and you think, I'm just going to push through this and I'm going to make this happen. And you can end up losing your temper because of that. So I would say just try to be aware of that and maybe say to your spouse, hey, like, if I get to this point, I need to go for a walk and this is why. And hopefully she'll understand, so that even if things are chaotic and you turn to her and say, I need to go for a walk and I'll be back, she's not going to complain about it. She's going to say, good, like, you're checking yourself. Like this, like you leaving for 5 or 10 or 20 minutes and then coming back more refreshed and able not to snap is obviously a lot better than you blowing up then and there. So I would say, though, be patient with yourself, get to the sacrament of confession, pray for God's grace, and get help. Like, don't be afraid to get whatever help you can at this point. I know there's a lot of stress with the coronavirus and everything that's going on right now. Let's see here. Darren Griffin says, where can I find a full version of Emma's song to use on the podcast? Gee. She's on Facebook, my sister. Go ask her. I don't actually know where you'd get it from. Samantha Schroeder says, is it wrong to cohabitate during the coronavirus pandemic if you are chaste? Yeah, I'd say, like, you can cohabitate under extreme, like, necessity. You know what I mean? Like, if you have actually no other option than living in the same house with someone you're in a romantic relationship with prior to marriage, then that might be justified. But I think the two reasons that you shouldn't be cohabitating with someone, even during this coronavirus, is one, it can cause scandal, and two, you're putting yourself in the near occasion of sin. So, don't know if that helps. Hopefully it does. Jeremy says, do you have a censer in your prayer corner? If so, how and when do you use incense in daily prayer? And do you have any recommended resources? So I do have a censer. It's pretty cool. It's got all the bells on it and stuff. I'll have to show you guys. We'll do a tour at some point. But I don't bust that out every night. It's a lot of work. So I usually just bust that out on the night before feast days or Sunday. That is actually something I've been really enjoying doing. And I would just say to the men out there, if you're married, like, you are the priest of your family. I don't mean that you're an ordained priest and that you can, like, confect the Eucharist. That's not what I mean, obviously. But you are the priest of your household. You should be the spiritual head of your household. It doesn't mean you should be perfect. I mean, maybe you should be, but it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. I'm sure as goodness not. But one of the things I've really enjoyed doing is, me personally, I don't like sitting down and watching Sunday Mass. I'm sorry. I'm really impressed with everybody who gets dressed up, sits in their living room with their kids and watches it. That's beautiful. I'm really serious when I say that. That's lovely. That's just not something that I do or have any desire to do. Maybe I should have the desire to do it, but I don't. And I couldn't see my kids actually sitting through it if I was to force them. So what we do is we'll do kind of liturgical prayer morning and night. Not liturgical, maybe that's the wrong way of putting it, but kind of set prayers that we do morning and night. There's lots of bows and chanting and maybe if you were, as a father of your home, you could lead your family in the Holy Rosary every day, or at least on Sundays, something like that. I think, during this time where we cannot get to Divine Liturgy, Holy Mass, like, you can lead your family in prayer nightly, and on Sundays you might lead them in a longer prayer, and that's what I do, and that's why I use the incense then. Laurie says, you may have already answered this in another talk, but do you think you and Cameron were given false negatives for the coronavirus? You seem to have all the symptoms. I was so surprised to hear your test came back negative. Also, how are you guys feeling? You're very sweet. We're feeling much better. I guess it's possible that it's a false negative, but you can only go with what people are telling you. So I'm going to go with it was something super weird. There you are. Do you have it? And then I'm going to get to your questions here on YouTube. All right? I'm just answering my patrons' questions because I like them more than you because they give me money. Eric says, do you have any book recommendations for small children, like 2+-year-olds? What have you found to read to kids this age? All right, Aesop's Fables. Go get that book. Buy it on Amazon. It'll come later because of the virus and everything, but get it, Aesop's Fables. And then just a good old book on fairy tales. If you just type in Brothers Grimm's fairy tales, like I just read Cinderella 2 nights ago, the original Cinderella, like where the the stepsisters have to cut off pieces of their feet to try and fit them in the shoe. It's pretty crazy, but kids love it, and I would highly recommend reading that. Even if they don't fully grasp it, I think it's totally okay. My gosh, so many questions from my patrons, but I think we're going to just pause here and go here. So thank you to everybody who's here currently watching. Let's take some questions. Whatever questions you have, just throw them up here, and I will begin to answer them. Philosophy and Theology for Idiots. That sounds like a cool YouTube channel. I'm sure you're doing great work. Well, I'm not sure. I hope you are. Says, you're not gonna shave again, right? Yeah, so like, I'm aware that this doesn't look great, but I'm gonna bloody well stick it out. I've told my friend that I'm gonna give it 3 months, so we will see. That's kind of what I'm gonna go for. Beard in quarantine. Do my best. Let's see. Is this a response to Dr. Marshall and Gordon brothers, says Randall Brown? No, it's not, because I'm very unfamiliar with what's going on between Taylor Marshall and Timothy Gordon. Someone texted me and said they're having a bit of a quarrel, that maybe Dr. Marshall blocked Timothy Gordon, but I can't validate that. I think it's probably best to stay out of it, given that it's none of my business. But I have a lot of love for Timothy Gordon. I find him to be a very sincere and good person. Do I agree with him on some of his views? Yes. On others, I don't. But the idea that I have to agree with him on everything in order to find him to be a sincere and good person, I think, is a bit much. So I have a lot of love for him. So there you are. So no, this is not a response to them. I have no interest in responding to whatever's going on. As I say, I don't know much about it. So there you are. What are the most creative ways you've seen online or in person of priests administering the sacraments? Well, I heard the other day that Father Jack Durkin, I said Father Jack Knight in a recent video, and I meant Father Jack Durkin. The other day, he was driving around different neighborhoods with a gigantic crucifix out the back for Good Friday. I know that's not administering sacraments, but I thought that was pretty cool. Let's see. Someone says, I have a quarantine beard going on too. Good for you. Somebody says, do you listen to any other metal other than Metallica? So, listen, I do like to listen to some metal, but that if I say the name, I don't want you to think that I'm thereby endorsing them. Obviously, certain metal bands have horribly immoral music and things like this, so if I was to mention them, it doesn't mean I'm endorsing them. Let's see. So I like System of a Down a little bit if I'm working out. What else? Burn This CD, is that the name of one of their albums I like? I like some Pantera, but I can't stomach a lot of it. Try Megadeth, but don't like Dave Mustaine's voice, I have to be honest. His guitar playing is absolutely legendary, of course. I like Foo Fighters a great deal. I think they're fantastic. What else? Deftones. I like some Deftones. There you go. Is that good? Beard looks good, Matt. Thank you, Zest Tenor. I'm trying to make it nice and soft so that my wife will want to keep kissing me. My wife's beautiful. Let's see. Have you ever been to an Anglican ordinariate use mass, says Anglican Catholic. Yes, I have, and it's absolutely beautiful, delightful, lovely. So, trust the bloody Anglicans to know how to use the English language, am I right? Let's see. Fergus McClintock says, are you still on the KJV? Get a bloody Douay Rheims already, mate. Okay, I don't read the KJV every day. I choose to read the RSV. And I don't want to read the Douay Rheims because even though I understand it has a lot of legitimacy, given that it was translated by Jerome, and then the Latin version was into Latin, and then that was a translation of that. And I get its pedigree in the history of the church, but I think there are errors in it that you're not going to find in the RSV. So I don't know why people have this allegiance to a particular Bible version necessarily. I think the goal should be the translation that's the most accurate and readable. And so for me, that's the RSV. But I like the KJV because I think it's beautiful. And I find it more beautiful than the Douay Rheims. That's not me saying it's better or more accurate in every instance, but just that I find it more beautiful to read. Caden says, Palimism, Scotism versus Thomism episode. Yes, that is in the works. We're going to do a Palimism, Thomism episode in the near future. Also, next week, I'm looking at interviewing Dr. Scott Hahn, so that'll be fun. All right, let's see. My goodness, you guys are fantastic. A lot of stuff on SSPX, which I have not much desire to respond to. Sorry. Philosophy and Theology says, do you ever think of having some atheists on the show? I'm certainly open to it, yep. Have you ever interviewed agnostics, says Omar, and learned more on their opposition on God's existence? Well, I think I've definitely spoken to a lot of atheists and have learned about their opinion on that, yep. Audra Burke says, where can I find a Byzantine Liturgy of the Hours book? Resources. Your night prayer on a previous video was lovely, and I would like to learn more. Are you English, Audra? Because it seems like Aussies and English people say lovely a lot. I find I say that. Oh, that's lovely. But I don't hear Americans say, oh, I have to say, that is just lovely. But maybe they do. I don't know. So I use a book called Publican's Prayer Book, but I'll tell you what I'll do. Because I've gotten so many people referring to morning prayer and night prayer, and the night prayer that I prayed recently. So I will do an episode where I record myself chanting morning prayer and night prayer, and then I'll give you the text for it in like a PDF, everybody, if that sounds good to you. All right, so look out for that, because so many of you have asked for it. So, hi, Matt. I see that you now have 40K subs. Have you grown a lot recently? Yeah, I'd say over the last several months we've got a lot of subscribers. Man, oh man. Megadeth all day long. Yep, they're pretty good for sure, but Metallica is definitely better. What advice do you have for someone struggling with cynicism, asks Mark Lismer. Yeah, cynicism is one of these dangerous things that we can fall into as we grow older. And I think a key, I think one of the reasons we tend to express cynicism is through sarcasm. I think sarcasm is a vice. And if you're a sarcastic person, I think you should stop. I think sarcasm is, generally speaking, it expresses a deep cynicism. In fact, sarcasm comes from Latin words sarx, flesh, chasm, tear, is it? Or, yeah, so the tearing of flesh is what sarcasm, etymologically means. So I guess if you're struggling with cynicism, you could start a blessing journal and start writing down what you're thankful for. You could start in your daily prayer praising God for what you're thankful for, as opposed to whining about what you're not. You could get a rubber band around your wrist and smack yourself every time just a suggestion, every time you complain. Alex Bruce says, do you have suggestions on how to start praying daily if that's something people struggle with? Yes, two things. One, get the Hallow app, Hallow. It's a fantastic app that'll teach you how to pray better, 100% Catholic. And then I would say be consistent more than lengthy. So, Alex, I would say do something really simple. Put a crucifix by your bed. When you wake up in the morning, pick it up and kiss it. And offer a small prayer to God. And then when you go to bed, do another prayer. Try that for a week. And be consistent in something small rather than getting really passionate, setting yourself an hour of time to pray and then not following through. That's my personal thoughts. Man, oh man, oh man. Look at you guys. You're fantastic. Okay. Thank you. Jonathan says, guys, like this video. It helps Matt. Yeah, it'll help share the video. If you like it, like it. If you love it, subscribe. Thanks a lot, guys. Okay, guys, I gotta go. This is fantastic, but there are so many questions. I should probably go be with my family. Thanks so much for being here. Do us a favor and subscribe. That way, if you click subscribe and then that thumb icon, thumbs up, subscribe thing. Not thumbs up. What is it? Subscribe and then whatever. Just subscribe. And then YouTube will be forced to let you know every time we put out a new episode. Let me tell you about something we got coming up. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to be interviewing a fantastic psychologist, Catholic psychologist by the name of Dr. Jerry Crete. And we are going to discuss anxiety during coronavirus. It was a 3-hour interview. We just did it here in my office because he lives nearby, and that'll be releasing soon. We're also looking to have professionally dubbed videos in Spanish of the smaller clips that we're putting out and starting a Pints with Aquinas Espanol channel to minister to our fantastic Latino brothers and sisters. We're doing a lot of stuff at Pints with Aquinas, and so that's why your support now really helps. Obviously, people are have legitimate reasons for quitting Patreon. I get it, and I think that's fantastic that you got to do what you got to do. But if you're in a place where you can support the work that we're doing, even for $1 a month, that is going to help all of this: the interviews, the Spanish translations, the new website, the marketing that we're doing. That would help. Or do what you do. You do you. You do what you want to do. I don't want to tell you what to do. God bless you. Thanks for being here. See ya.